Hello and welcome to Company Culture with Yvette C. Owens. And I have a guest, a special guest with me tonight, David Gallagher from Leadership by Design. Hey, David, how are you? It's nice to have you.
Hi, Yvette. Good to be here. I'm not sure how special I am, but I'm happy to be here.
You're special to me because you're here. How about that? Um, so, David and I want to come, we're going to come and we're going to talk to you about culture and what it really means and how we can shape the culture because I know a lot of folks are feeling somewhat empowered, probably. Um, you're probably wondering what's going on with the not only with the world but even the environments that you're in, whether it be your workplace, any type of organization you're in. How do I shape that organization? How do I shape that world? How do I shape that culture? And how do I shape even the culture that I'm in, my city, my state, my neighborhood, my community, as citizens and leaders and people who participate in those cultures, we can make a difference. And so tonight we want to start with what is culture? How do we define it, David? How do we know that we know what the culture is in and around us? How do we make sure that we are staying in tune even if it shifts? What is culture? Let's talk about that.
It's funny. The Ideally, if I'm interviewing to be part of a company, I should start to experience the culture during the entire engagement and interview process. I should start to see, especially when I join the first week, I should start to feel what this culture is about. And that means all the written rules and the unwritten rules. That means the spoken rules and the unspoken rules. And hopefully, somebody is courageous enough to pull me aside at some point to say, David, that's not how we do things here, just so you know. It'd be nice to hear that up front. But I've seen
Mhm.
so many situations in all kinds of organizations of various sizes, different industries, where all the aspects of the culture were not shared. But culture is what are our values? What are the behaviors that we
Mm.
expect? The behaviors that we do not want to see? The values, are we aligned or are we not aligned? Do we see things on the same page or differently, etc.? So I guess that's my knee-jerk reaction to that.
Yeah, and it you've really hit it. So it's like, what's that undercurrent? What are those hidden rules or those hidden practices that we might not necessarily know? And some of them are very much known, right? The values that people have, the values in um, what we bring to the table, what we're expecting of everyone that comes into the place, how we really want to do it. And the mission, we may be driven to the vision or the mission of that organization, but how they go about doing or fulfilling that mission is really critical, right? That's really that's the breaker. That can be the deal breaker if we're not aligned with how they go about. So is integrity, accuracy, um, are we being ethical? Are we being inclusive? Are we and allowing diversity to come into the space? All of those things really start to dictate what that culture is. And it's not so much that we want to fit into the culture, but can we add and contribute and enhance that culture? How can we contribute and enhance how they're doing what they're doing? And we need to look at that from even the world today. How do we really look at our values? And it seems like we're slipping in our value system, things that we never would have thought that we would see some of our leaders doing in the world and things like that. Some of those things, they're just not happening the way we would expect it to happen. Some of us who are more mature would remember life being very much more different and people caring more about each other. And so we as a people and as leaders and individuals can definitely redesign and reshape what we're seeing. And if we all own that, we can absolutely and will absolutely make a difference. So, David, I'm not sure where, so we need to shift. And so we need to understand what culture is, how culture operates, what the world is happening, what's happening in the world today. So how do you define that? How do you go about redesigning your world? How do you go about making sure that that as a leader, you even understanding what it is that how we want to deliver the services and products? How do we want to have our citizens in the world live with each other? That's culture. It's a group of people coming together, or a group of various people coming together and doing things and to fulfill an objective at the same time in a manner that we all the pieces fit to a perfect end. That's what we're doing. So when we talk about redesigning, we need to really make sure that we are understanding what's happening in our world. We need to understand um, what's expected. And as leaders, we should be very intentional about what it is that we want our culture to be. Um, we hear, even in the political arena, various people um, speaking on how the world should be working. Should certain people have rights? Should certain people not have rights? Are we protecting all the citizens? Are we protecting everyone in that climate? That's what we need to figure out. And that's how you determine your culture intentionally. Be intentional about culture. I believe so many people in their organizations, they come to the organization, they define the organization based on the products and services, the vision that they have, and that's how they want to achieve. That's where their focus is. However, what we need to focus on without determining what that environment is in which people are going to deliver those services, in which people are going to fulfill your vision, is going to look like and feel like to those who are members, it will define itself. That's one thing. It will define itself if a leader does not define it, shape it, navigate it. It will define itself, and it may end up being counterproductive to what you really intend or what you really want as a leader to be, the experience for your folks to be. And then you allow them to give them room and space to help to enhance that culture, to enhance that place, enhance that environment, so that you get the outcome that you want. And the outcome, I know we define as our products, we define as our services, but it's also what's the environment. People spend the majority of their time there in that workplace. How do we make sure that it's a healthy place for them, it's a healthy place for leadership, and it's a healthy place for our customers and clients to interact with us? Any thoughts on that, David?
Well, I'm just back. Uh, so I
That's
don't know
okay.
what happened. I'm looking at my internet Wi-Fi sitting right next to me, and all of a sudden it turned a different color and went down. So,
That's all right.
so my apologies. So I think I've been away maybe longer than you are aware. But
Yeah. No,
so
I saw when you left, but I was talking about, helping people really understand the dynamics of the culture, and what that really means. And it's how we have to be intentional as leaders to what it is that we really want that environment to be, for people to be able to produce the services, produce the products, for our clients and customers to be able to feel that it's the right place for them. They want to come back, right? They want to
yes,
be able to continue to engage with us. That's really what culture is. And so, and I broadened it even to the world and what's happening in our country. We want people to be able to feel like this is a healthy place to live in the country. We want others to feel at home here if they've chosen to make this their home. So, how do we do that? And the important elements of that. That's what I was sharing.
So I have a couple comments, Yvette, and this dealing with the sudden internet going out, and then it's kind of like dealing with, on a very small scale, dealing with the pandemic. All of a sudden, saying, "Okay, life has changed. How do you deal with
Right,
it?" Um,
right.
and so that actually, there are a lot of lessons in that, by the way, for leaders and individual contributors to say, "How did we respond to this as a
Hmm.
leadership team? How did I respond to this as an individual contributor? What did I learn about myself?" I had a conversation with some college students a few weeks ago, and I said, "So, what are the good things that came out of this?" And they looked at me with these puzzled looks. Of course, it was over video conferencing, so at least it looked
Right.
puzzling to me. Uh, and I said, "Well, you're learning."
Okay, I think David's having internet problems again. But that's a good question. Actually, I'm in an organization, and even in my church, we were asked, how what did we learn from the pandemic, right? And how has that changed us? And so we all had to decide and be able to articulate how it changed. Some people described that they were able to get closer to God. Um, they were able to understand that family was more important. Um, they were able to um, really spend more time and get to know them even more.
Uh, can,
Um,
can I?
so it's really important, and I was sharing that I was in an organization too that asked in my church, they asked, "What did you learn from the pandemic? How did that impact you?" Because it's changing all of us, and therefore it will change how we respond to our assignments and things like that. And so, folks were saying how it made them really dig deep and understand themselves better, so that now their choices are better. Some people said, "You know what? My no is now no." Um, when people are asking me things, I'm not just because I understand how important life is and how fragile it can be. So whatever decision I that's going to be best for me, I'm making those decisions that's best for me and feeling okay about it. So so that's a great question that you asked those college students.
And you also mentioned, Yvette, about the how do you reinforce the culture? And one of the last senior teams and I that used to talk about this was everything we say and do, every behavior, every action needs to reinforce the culture. And if we
Hmm.
want to introduce something new, a new initiative, there's a great saying out there by an old leadership theorist named Peter Drucker. And he said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yeah.
And what he meant by that was you can have the greatest ideas, greatest initiatives, greatest strategies in mind that you want to add to your organization, whatever that organization is. But if it's not supported with the culture, then you need to address those things in the culture and add
Hmm.
those things to make sure it gets life
Right.
um, to continue.
Yeah, and so I know we continue to use the word culture, and we're happy to see those of you who have joined us, stay with us, contribute to the conversation, because this is something that is really impacting us, whether we know it or not. And we're here to let you know that you do have some in power. You do have control in shaping. This is the best time to really help to redesign what the environments that you are in, what they're going to look like in the future. Because guess what? This is all brand new to everyone, everyone. And so the way that things were done before may not always can't some of them can't work the same way anymore. because we just been put out of the places that we were in, out of the physical places. And so we need to figure out how we're going to really shape, how we're going to make things better. And whether it's in our communities, you don't have to be victim to the culture, how things are moving. We can make a difference and set the pace, set the climate. That's what we're really talking about. How do you set that climate so that it's a healthy climate for everyone, right? It's a healthy climate for everyone.
Absolutely, and it needs to be purposeful. In other
Mhm.
words, thinking periodically about, okay, let's revisit who we are and where we're headed. And is everything in our organization and all the policies and the practices, processes, etc., are they all pointed in the same direction? Do they all support every initiative we're trying to move forward? Because if they don't, the mission is going to fail. I remember in one organization, I was said, "We're going to start this initiative." I said, "Okay, that's great. I like that." You do realize that there are several aspects in our culture that don't support that.
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's not our mission. Or that's not the subject of our project. Well, it better be, because if it isn't considered inside, it's like change management, really. If
Right,
you don't consider all that, it's going to struggle at some point and or fail.
right,
Um, and it wasn't me being negative. It was just saying, okay, great, to make this successful, let's make sure everything's aligned in our culture.
right. And so I think you're bringing up a really good point about um, we have there's visions, right? Whether we're talking about vision for um, feeding the hungry more, and that's what if that's that vision that we have, we want to feed more families, say, if that's the but we need to figure out a way how to do that without it's with keeping those who are preparing the meals, those who are serving the meals, and those who are eating the meals safe, because that's a main criteria right now. How do we do that and still maintain the vision that we have and in that culture? So people are now more intense, more tense, more tension. So how do we make sure that we still have that relaxed environment, if that's the way we have defined it, and I'm assuming it is, that people feel that they're welcomed, that they can come, that nobody's going to be judgmental. Because guess what? A lot of people are hurting right now. A lot of people are hungry. So, but now I'm in a position that, and I'm just putting this out an example so people can grasp really what we're talking about. But now I'm in a position where I wasn't trying to get food before. I was one contributing to food. How do we set an environment that people can still feel that they can come, that they would know that they're welcome? That's what we're talking about when we talk about culture. How do we make sure people are feeling welcomed and that they can contribute to that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've seen some of those examples on just watching the news where people would say, like you said, Yvette, I used to be the one that would contribute to these food drives, and now I'm sitting in line.
Right.
And some of those people felt like, should I be embarrassed? Should I feel guilty?
Hmm.
No, this is just a new place that you found yourself, and that can be okay. But we need to address it. It's kind of like, so when I think of that, it's kind of like also addressing your customer base and your employees. Whatever kind of organization you're in, we all have customers, whether they're internal or external. We
Right.
all have employees or volunteers, but we need to think about empathy. And
Hmm.
some people think about empathy, because I've seen this for decades, from certain leaders, and they say that, "Oh, I shouldn't be concerned about David's feelings." Well, it's not just feelings; it's What's his frame of reference? Where is he coming from? What's
Yes, yeah,
what's gonna be important to him? If Yvette comes into the food, bank line and she's never, ever been in a line like that and never
right,
thought of it, I should understand perhaps a little bit about where she's coming from and serve her, accordingly.
correct.
Um, and it's no different than it's funny when people think about, "Oh, I shouldn't be worried about my employees' feelings." I say, "Well, wait a minute. You are concerned about your customers' frame of reference and what they
Mhm,
like, what they don't like, what they want, what they don't want. That's no different. It's not
right,
that you're an amateur psychologist or that you're concerned about their feelings. Hopefully you are, but if you're not,
right.
you're at least concerned about what are their needs and how am I gonna serve them best?
Exactly. And I've seen so many organizations succeed during this pandemic because they turned up the volume on having
Mm,
empathy around their employees, and so that the employees can still serve their
mm.
customer base and still help them meet their vision and their goals, right? Or even exceed them far beyond what they ever thought they could in this type of crisis, right? Because they paid attention to the fact that I need to make sure if I take care of them first and I'm sincere about that, then they know they have we're with them. We know that they know that we understand that they're juggling many different things because they're juggling school, they're juggling educating their children, they're juggling educating the work, they're juggling, parent managing parents and everything else. And so that was a shift that those companies who are being most successful in this during this crisis really made, and it's measurable. It's really measurable.
Absolutely. I still remember some situations where, so many companies or organizations of any type would start to realize, "Oh, Yvette or David there or Mary or Bill, they're in a tiny apartment or they're in a small house and now they're home during the pandemic. And not only do they not have the space to create a situation where they can work remotely easily,
Mhm.
they also have another adult who's also doing the same thing. They have 3 children who they're trying to homeschool, and how are they doing that? And by the way, they have a dog running around and a cat jumping up on top of
Yep,
the desk, walking by the computer, which is fun.
exactly.
But it's also on the plus side, it's made some leaders realize that, "Oh, okay, this is not bad. This is I
Right,
actually get to know Yvette a little bit better. I get to
right.
know what her personal situation is, and,
Mhm.
I'm lucky that I don't have to deal with that, but she does, so I need to
Right.
realize that.
Mhm.
I need to understand, back to the empathy word, where she's coming from and what she's dealing with in life."
Yeah, and that changes again, the environment because now I'm really focused more on the outcome and the environment I want, um, to create for our people to be their best.
Yep.
So, companies who would be on the flip side or organizations who would be on the flip side because they would feel so much pressure in this environment that we're in and start to be dogmatic about with the working with their people and like really pushing people beyond because I've heard those stories too where
Mm.
it's like they're being very demanding on the people in their organization really pushing. It's because they're still trying to figure out how they're going to survive and they're not being as productive. But that behavior in itself is the very thing that's least helpful in this type of environment because it's only putting more stress on a very stressed environment that everybody is living in this world. They're trying to figure out how to stay safe, not only from a pandemic, but how to stay safe from political situations and upheavals and riots and things like that. And people just lashing out and you know, everyone now just showing true colors, if you will. It's and then they have to come to work, and they have to, and they're going to because they want to, um, they want to make a living and they love what they do. But even in that has been a struggle for some people. So we have to, leaders are, I'm calling for leaders to really be intentional about the space and the environment in which they're giving their employees, their members, their congregants, their students, their teachers, or whatever, space to be able to live the life that they have to live, but still achieve the goals and objectives. And some of those practices that you had in your organization before, maybe we can relax on them a little bit. Maybe they're not as important as we thought they were. Because if we're still meeting goal, or still people, we can get behind people and support them, we might find out that some of those practices have served their time, and we're now in a new time.
Great points, Yvette. So what I would suggest is that any senior team of an organization, or different departments in an organization, should take this time and reflect right now, even though the pandemic is not over, right now, what did we learn about ourselves? What did we do well? What should
Mhm.
we have done differently? If we could do it over again, and granted, and don't put blame on yourself. This is completely unanticipated. So a situation like this.
Absolutely.
So what could we have done could what could we have done differently? Were we candid enough? Were we transparent enough? There are
Mhm.
those leaders, and I know you know this, Yvette. There are those leaders that feel like, I'm not going to talk until I have all the answers. Well,
Right.
it's okay to say I don't know. It really is.
Exactly.
And it actually shows humanity. It shows honesty.
Mhm.
Shows
Mhm.
integrity, because that tells you that when I do know the answer, I will tell you. And if I don't know the answer,
Absolutely.
I will tell you that also.
Mhm.
So you'll always know where I stand. Um, and if you have the answer and I don't, I'd love to hear it. I
Mhm.
always want to hear your perspective, but which goes back to the diversity thing. I want to hear a diverse set of opinions about a situation. Um, so
Yeah,
it's
the
interesting.
people. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, no, go ahead, Yvette.
So the people that may not have looked to or listened to in the past, now's a
Mm.
great time to be open to their perspective. And if we are folks who were part of an organization or part of a movement, and we were just following the leader, but complaining on the back end, now's the time to bring forth those ideas, collaborate, share where we think that we can make a difference. Because sometimes, most of the time, and I've seen this happen, and I know you have too, David, where one person in the room says, well, what about this? And then the next person builds on it, says, yeah, but and if we take that and we do this also, and then be together, you end up with something absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
So we have to start those conversations. We have to start sharing the ideas that we have on how the world should be, how our worlds, whether it's in our organization or whether it's in our communities, whether it's um, whatever your organization is, how can we make things better for ourselves, the organization, our clients? How can we even produce better products in this space called after pandemic, right? Or during the pandemic? Because your voice is more important today than it has ever been. And some of those leaders that David is talking about, that may feel like they have to wait till they have all the answers. Guess what? They're seeking answers. And I don't know, it's first of all, I don't know if it's really, I know it's not beneficial for them to try to make up anything until they have answers. But if they see people coming to the table with some suggestions, not dictating, but with suggestions on how our world can be better, then they have then we're going to get better outcome.
Absolutely. And you made a couple points earlier about culture and learning from all this. But so to your point about maybe we've learned something as an organization that what we used to think was important, maybe that's not so important anymore.
Right.
You take the amount of people that are doing work remotely today. Well, should we allow more of that going forward for certain roles? And I get the fact that
Mhm.
certain industries cannot do that as easily, but some industries can. It's been an old bias that if I don't see Yvette sitting in her office, I don't know that she's actually
Right.
working. She's probably out,
Right.
you know, cutting the grass or walking the dog or whatever.
Mhm.
Well, no, not necessarily. And by the way, if she is just walking the dog for 10 minutes, is that so bad?
Right. Right.
If if
Right.
she's still getting her work done. So
Absolutely.
so it's a good time to reevaluate what did we do? What did we do well? What do we need to get better at? What do we want our culture to be like when we get back all together again, whenever that is? What
Mhm.
needs to be reinforced? Because some aspects of the culture should probably be purposely reinforced because we've been all in a very different environment for so long. What things might we want to change a little bit, such as the working remotely? Maybe what we want to allow that a little bit more often, etc.
Right.
Uh, what did we learn about? Because there are many industries that. Um, oh, I'm going to make a comment about culture and industries in a second. But what about the industries that have uh, groups around the entire country or the entire globe? And by the nature of what you do, Yvette has always managed people remotely. Well, what did
Right.
we learn during this time? Maybe there's some lessons we can promote across our entire organization about how to lead people and work with people in virtual situations. The other thing about culture to consider is that there are lots of industries or the purpose of a particular nonprofit that are going to drive huge aspects of that culture, such as
Mhm.
I'll make an extreme differentiation. So if you and I are leaders in a nuclear power plant versus you and I are running a storefront on Main Street selling gifts,
Mhm.
the culture is going to be very different. I mean, the one on Main Street, we can be very creative and so forth. Not that we aren't compliant, not that we don't have safety protocols. I don't mean that.
Right.
However, if you and I are working in a nuclear plant, what's going to drive our culture? It's going to be
That's
government,
safety. Mhm.
absolutely safety exponentially,
Right.
government compliance, uh,
Right.
that type of thing, and that's going to come into lots of our policies and practices. It doesn't mean that's the way the people are necessarily. It could be, but it's also because of the industry that we're in. We have to be that way.
Right, right. And so when we talk about redesigning our world, whether it's in the organization or the community, we need to start with what really the best place to start is what really matters to me. What is, because I often say if I'm seeing it and it really is bothering me, then it might be something that I can help with, that I should have a voice to. Um, if I'm getting an idea, then I need to express those things so that again we can collaborate, we can talk more, find other people with like-mindedness and start to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling, and just spark up the conversation. That's the best way to start changing things. That's how many of these movements that we see across the country have started. Um, all of them have started with some people's getting having a conversation and saying, I don't like what I'm seeing. We need to start this movement. And so they started talking about how they could build that movement together. Well, we can do the same thing. We see something we don't like. So, one of the things, and I'll take something outside of a company organization, but it could be a company that it really, really helps to solve this. When I saw an article about the young people and the children at Texas border. There's over 500, maybe 545 of them that still have not been matched to their parents. That concerned me, after all this time, that there's so many young children that's displaced from their parents and they have no idea how to reach them. Well, that can you get people together to talk about, and I know that there are federal agencies and folks who are working hard and diligent to bring them and find their parents, and it's difficult when they're in another country and so forth. But you get enough people like myself who are concerned about that, and sparking ideas and sharing ideas, that then starts to speak to what our culture is. Our culture is a culture of people who care about children, right? And we care about their welfare, and we think families should be together, and we think that they should be with their parents. Those kind of things help to define what a culture really should be and what our world should be. And so that's where we can start to redesign it. Even if you're in an organization, where is your passion? What are you seeing that you really want to change? Start a conversation around it. Start doing and bringing up topics around that item. Start sharing ideas, seek ideas, go out and search the internet about what are other people doing about this very type of situation in other organizations, and bring that back. We don't have to, obviously, we don't always have all the answers that we need in our organization. Sometimes we have to look outside of our organizations and even to uncommon places. So it has to could look outside of our industry to inform our own industry on how we could certainly do something different that would allow us to redesign that world, redesign that culture, so we progress and we start to move forward.
Yeah. Good points, Yvette. Good points.
Yeah. So from a leadership perspective, David, in addition to what you shared with us already, um, if I'm the leader and the visionary, what 2 to 3 things would you say to the leadership at this time that could help them at least start to get a pulse on the climate of their environment, the climate of their culture? Is the culture really what I expected? Should I be changing it?
Well, I guess I would start asking. It's a two thing, not just asking, but listening, because people can ask, but not really
Mhm.
listen. Uh, and when I say that, I mean, I've seen people ask the questions, they ask the right questions, but they quickly dismiss, yeah, well, that's not going to work here, Yvette. Ask and listen to what are your what are your staff of your organization looking for? What are your customers looking for? Even if you don't call them customers, if you're in a nonprofit and you're serving the community, if you're in a religious organization and you're serving the community, they are, in a sense, customers. That's it's a
Yeah.
broad word. I get that. I talked to a chiropractor once, and I said, "Well, these are customers." Oh no, they're not. They're patients. So, no, they're customers because I don't have to come to you. I can go to somebody else.
Mhm.
Uh,
Right.
so, there are customers. So, what are people looking for? Um, and what have you learned? What is your like? I go back to what I said previously about what have you learned about yourself, about how you dealt with this. What have you and your senior team learned about how you approach this?
Mhm.
Uh, what did you miss? And don't be overly critical because this was unforeseen. But what did we miss when we were
Right.
trying to approach this? What were our employees looking for that they did not get?
Mhm.
What did they get a piece of? What did they get a lot of? What did they really enjoy? You go back to the working virtually thing. Some people love that. Other
Yeah.
people hate it. Uh,
Mhm.
and that depends upon a whole lot of factors. So, what's been working and what hasn't been working? And learn from that, and learn from your competitors. What are other people in your industry doing that
Mhm.
you might model after? And I know this is not welcomed in some industries, but how about looking outside of your industry into another
Mhm.
industry and saying,
Mhm.
well, they did this over there, because I've seen it dismissed so quickly too many times about, yeah, that's a different industry. They don't do things the way they
Right.
do.
Right.
Well, yes, but they're dealing with some of the same issues. So maybe we can learn something from that, and
Mhm.
maybe we adapt it accordingly. Maybe we adapt it in a certain fashion that'll work for us.
Right.
Uh, so be open to learning from a variety of different diverse aspects.
Awesome. Awesome. So I hope that whether you're listening to this broadcast live or whether you're going to listen to the replay, that you share your thoughts, share your ideas, share how this broadcast has impacted you. This is broadcast on various my Facebook page, Company Culture with Yvette C. Owens. I will periodically do more video interviewing guests. I want to thank David for being here with me today. It's also on my personal page. It's also on um, YouTube. So please go to YouTube. There's other videos out there where I've had conversations with people around the culture, the company, organizations, things to help you really excel. And that page is the YouTube channel is Yvette C. Owens. Please like and subscribe to that channel. And on um, November 5th, I do have another special guest coming. That is Aisha Young, and we'll be talking about conquering organizational dysfunction. My past followed me to work. So a lot of times what we've experienced in our past and things like that follow us into other places. And if we are not getting a handle on it, on a journey to really heal from those things, it could really hurt us coming into organizations. It can hurt us even as leaders when we're trying to build high performing teams. Now, all that stuff that we have in us is following us. And we are going to talk about how to do that. Aisha is um, the owner of Conquering Your Journey, and she goes by Young Lady as her branding name. And so we're going to hear from her and looking forward to that conversation again on November 5th at 7 p.m. So thank you again, David, for joining me today. This again will be shared also on LinkedIn for those who are our LinkedIn partners. And if you have other ideas that you'd like me to share and talk about as discussion points, please also share that as well. Remember that you are in control of your own destiny and of our world. And if we start lifting our voices, speaking out, and saying what we want, and no better time than now to really decide and make the difference that can happen. And if we all do that, get back to those values that we have, um, get get really define the values that we want and be intentional about it in our organizations, in our communities, in our companies, then we're going to have a better world. So go and redesign your world. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
Have a good night. Take care.